Welcome to the Linbury Theatre here at the Royal Opera House and to this Insight supported by Rolex. I'm Samira Ahmed and I'm delighted to bring you behind the scenes of the Royal Opera's new production of Siegfried. Considered the most fantastical opera of Wagner's Ring cycle, and Lord knows they are fantastical, Siegfried is an epic tale of courage and transformation. This third chapter of Wagner's tetralogy is brought to life under Barrie Kosky's direction, following on from his spectacular Das Rheingold and Die Walküre. Antonio Pappano conducts, drawing out the ethereal mysticism of Wagner's score. And I'm joined in conversation tonight by Barrie and Tony to tell us more about their collaboration on this production of Siegfried. We'll also be joined a little later this evening by a special guest, Stephen Fry, a dedicated Wagnerite and self-proclaimed ring chaser, who will be joining us remotely from Los Angeles to share his thoughts on the world of Wagner's opera. But for now, please help me welcome director Barrie Kosky and conductor Antonio Pappano. Welcome to you both, and thank you for joining us, and welcome back. It's like the dream team worked together again.
We're still talking to each other.
Yeah. Before we jump into this new production, let's think back briefly to the first two parts of the Ring cycle, which you began back in 2023, Das Rheingold and Die Walküre. And I wondered first, what stuck with you about that experience? What was the whole sense of going through it together like? Tony?
Well, this is the first time I've worked with Barrie, so for me, it took about 5 minutes, but we found the rhythm and the understanding and the way to, the simple word is to collaborate, but it's much more than that. It's an intertwining of and interruptions and a combined sense of mission, which we forged that's the word we use in Siegfried. Yeah, that has been just a sheer delight. I've learned so much, and I've learned so much, continue to learn about my favorite subject, which is show business, and what it means, and theater, but our job is to instill in others this knowledge, feeling, maybe the concepts, obviously, of the production and my view of the score, but using the music in front of me. But at the end, okay, I do perform on the night, but I'm down there where the singers. And the amount of, I wouldn't call it effort, but the amount of energy that we together have managed to focus in on these people. The hope is, of course, together that all that comes to some kind of wonderful fruition. And it's been an amazing a process, also because the pieces, Rheingold and Walküre, are so different. You go from what is essentially a play with music and absolutely there are so many ideas at play in Rheingold, but all of a sudden, and there's comedy, and there's the lurid aspect, and the giants and the dwarves and all this, the mythological, but of the underworld and the gods, but the underbelly of things is very interesting in Rheingold, but it goes at a pretty hectic pace. Whereas the Walküre, the introduction of sensuality and love, though it's a forbidden love between brother and sister, but the love between father and daughter, which is enormous in all opera. Look at Verdi, my goodness. But that relationship. So it requires from us a completely different approach to, just the humanity of it, how you go about dealing with sensuality and how you go about dealing with romanticism, because there's very little of that in Rheingold. Now with Siegfried, there is no romanticism or nothing, zero, for 2 acts.
We'll talk about Siegfried properly in a little bit, but I want to get a bit of the hinterground to this. Barrie, what were your thoughts about that whole experience of doing the first 2 parts, and indeed the critical reception?
Yeah, I'm sort of old enough and experienced enough, I wouldn't say wise enough, to sort of lightly shrug at any critical reception, whether it's good or bad. Not because I don't enjoy it, it's just that you can't, that's not the reason why we do it. Critical reaction is always nice when you get good and terrible when you get bad, but less terrible as you get older. Because I just do what I do, and if people like it, that's great, and if people don't like it, it's okay, it's art. You're allowed to not like something. So for me, the two constituents that I'm interested in are the artists in the rehearsal room and the audience. Whatever happens outside that is interesting, but not actually that important to me. What is important is what happens in the rehearsal room. That is the fundamental importance. And then what happens when you have that work presented on stage in front of an audience, which is the second half of the theatrical process. Because without the audience there, without the audience reacting at it, and also without us knowing that we are doing this for a group of people in a darkened room, it doesn't make any sense, theatre. So for me, that's the most important thing. I think picking up what Tony said is that, I've said this each time I've done one of these insights, that working with Tony is one of the greatest experiences of my life. And to be in a rehearsal room with this man is extraordinary. And we have forged, we're using that word, it's going to be our leitmotif
yes, it
for
is.
the evening, it's a very charged rehearsal room in the sense that we demand a lot. Because these pieces do not direct themselves, and these pieces certainly cannot be conducted themselves. You have to make decisions. You have to talk about what is the interpretation of the text, which there are so many directions you can go musically and theatrically. It's astonishing. It's a masterpiece. So with any masterpiece, you have to go, well, okay, we're not interested in this, and this. We're interested in that, and how are we going to shape that phrase? For the singers, it's really important because most opera rehearsal rooms are complex, how can I put this diplomatically, sometimes very unhappy. Because the opera singer is an interesting creature. They are there in a rehearsal room and they have 2 people in front of them, a conductor and a director. Now, you know when the rehearsals are going badly because the singer is just looking at the conductor, ignoring the director, or vice versa. Here, they have a problem because Papa and Mama are both really at it, and so you can see the singers, and he talks at the same speed as I talk, and sometimes we're talking over each other. So we're asking singers to really, we're asking a lot, but only through demanding people, I think only through demanding that the performers and the singers are really exploring this work does interesting theatre happen. That was my very long answer.
No. Well, give us a sense of like the overview. When you first embarked on the Ring cycle, what was the concept that you developed, Barrie, with Tony, and how did you discuss it?
For this one in particular?
Yeah, and how far did you have a sense of starting with just Rheingold all the way through?
Well, this is my second Ring cycle. It's Tony's second complete Ring cycle, though he's conducted it at the Proms and he's done a few revivals of the Keith Warner one. So Tony knows it better than I do, but I've done a whole cycle. So we're coming in knowing it very well. And it was always from the beginning, why it's also such a joyous experience with Tony, because Tony approaches it as if it's new. So anything's possible. And for me, it was very important to do the production outside Germany. I've lived in Germany German-speaking world for 25 years. My other production in Germany, I've directed at Bayreuth. I've done Wagner, 8 Wagner productions in Germany. And I wanted to see what it's like to do Wagner outside the German system and outside the baggage that you have when you do Wagner in Germany, which is complicated. And so I wanted to do that outside the German milieu. And it was very important to me. I've seen about 15 ring cycles, and some fabulous, some absolutely mind-bogglingly awful.
You don't want to name any?
No. But you know, and there's just and there's you know, everyone's the starting point for so many directors is, oh, I've got to do something new. I've got to do something new. What hasn't been done? I'm setting it on the moon. I'm setting it. You know, I'm doing this, whatever. And that was to me. That's never been an issue for me about how I approach a work. I always approach a work saying, what do I want to say? Yeah. What do I feel like now at this stage of my life? You know, I've explored, for example, in so many other productions, Wagner and anti-Semitism. I've done that. I did Meistersingers in Bayreuth, which was all about Wagner and anti-Semitism. And I said to Tony at the beginning, I've done it. This has got nothing to do with Wagner and his anti-Semitism because I've done it. So it's going to be doing other themes. And it was very clear to me that it had to be powerful, emotional, psychological narrative storytelling, because I think there's a thirst that audiences have for large emotions. And the only reason why opera exists as an art form is to enable a space where large emotions are experienced, both from the pit, the stage, and by the audience. And if you're not willing to say it's bigger than life, and it's truer than life through its artifice, then I don't think you should ever work in opera, because it doesn't make sense then. And for me, to do a ring cycle that had a very clear, simple narrative, because it's complicated enough, the story, and we then decided it's going to be Mother Earth dreaming, and that she was going to be dreaming the whole thing and dreaming our story. And it was going to have poetic, surreal moments, but it was going to be very character-driven, very performer-driven, and a sort of austere, clear, hot, emotionally hot world. I mean, that's a very broad statement.
That's a great description.
I think we achieved that in the first two, so we're crossing our fingers for Siegfried.
And Tony, you said the music for Siegfried is very different. Talk us through the musical soundscape of this production.
Of Siegfried?
Yeah.
Well, Siegfried is often referred to as the scherzo of this big symphonic tapestry, which is the ring. You know, depending on who's conducting, 14.5 to 15.5 hours of music. You know, and by scherzo usually means a quicker tempo, offering contrast with the pathos of some of the other movements, and it does that in a way. With Rheingold, that kind of writing, that kind of jittery, very nervous, cranky kind of writing was already introduced, but here it reaches really the summit of what you can do with it, because I'll give you, for instance, what the character of the music is. It's all in the first page, actually, and we have a rumble in the timpani, and then two bassoons play a drooping gesture, which is mima. It's been referred to as several different things, but I believe it's mima thinking, and because of it, the drooping, he's a loser. He's failing to answer the question of how can I forge the ring, and it haunts him, and it is very eerie. It has, you know, kind of a Hitchcock feel at the beginning. That but silence, but the rumble. And then we're introduced to the music of the dragon, which is Fafner, one of the giants who's transformed himself into a dragon to guard the gold that everybody wants. And the reason for forging the sword is to kill the dragon and get the gold. And everybody wants the gold, right? So then we're introduced to a theme to a gesture, I would call it, that is introduced in Rheingold And I could go on all night. And it is obsessive, because Mima is obsessed, and the hammering. He even hammers himself. Wagner asks the singer to but this is inside him, and only occasionally does he join. But it's like he's the worker ant but with totally obsessed, but a total failure in his mission.
I love the way.
So the frustration, the bile that's underneath, and it's twitchy. And look, I mean, just the atmosphere in the room as I'm singing that. But it's genius.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask Barrie then, take us more into some of the themes that the opera explores, because you've described Siegfried as Brothers Grimm meets David Lynch.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it's pretty bad much. I'd say it's Hansel and Gretel meets Blue Velvet. That's about it. No, I think what's extraordinary about Siegfried, and maybe we'll get to that later when Tony talks about the fact that Wagner had a huge 12-year gap as he was writing it. But what's extraordinary is that I just think about what that audience must have felt like when they first heard it, because it's unlike anything in opera literature, not just what Tony just sang, but the way in which the opera is written. The first act, what is it, hour and 20, hour 15?
Something like that, yeah.
Is essentially three men screaming at each other. I mean, it is unrelenting. Particularly, leave the middle scene, which is when Wotan, the Wanderer, comes on. The first third and the last third are two tenors. It's almost unheard of in opera until this time that two tenors would be singing for an hour and 15 minutes. There's no other opera like it. And
well, Rossini, but it's
but a different sort of
singing.
Screams in Rossini.
Yeah, no.
and at the end of the first act of a Rossini of Wagner, you're halfway through a Rossini opera. But I think that there's this incredible mixture of what Tony talked about, a sort of Hitchcockian, Bernard Herrmann, obsessive, frustrated unhappiness mixed in with really archetypal fairy story elements. We're in the middle of a wood. There's a mystery, there's an unresolved question. For Siegfried, who are my parents? Why am I here? And he's a child of nature, and we see that. He's like a poster boy for German Romanticism on one hand. The hilarious thing is that people think he was a poster boy for the Nazis, but Siegfried wasn't, because Siegfried is a failure. Siegfried at the end of Götterdämmerung gets killed. He ain't no poster boy for the third, right. And so he's this sort of boisterous child man. And then you have, as the opera progresses, it gets more and more dark and more obsessive. And you have one of my favorite moments in all of opera in the middle of the second act, where all the toxic men meet outside Fafner's golden lair. And Wotan, Alberich, Mima are circling round like rabid dogs. And Wagner writes this music, which is really almost a window into the 20th century. I was saying to Tony sometimes, the rehearsal, it's like he invented 20th century music before 20th century music came. You smell atonality in the music. You smell Freud.
Well, I was going to ask about that. There's a whole sense of the dream world and whether characters are awake or asleep, and their consciousness or their subconsciousness. Tell me a little about how you feel that in the music, Tony.
Well, the definition of a leitmotif, which is, you've heard me say this a million times, they're these musical visiting cards, the little themes or musical gestures that represent a character, a place, an idea, and of course, often the singer will be singing something and another theme will be playing, which in certain cases can be revealing what the singer's really saying or really thinking, as opposed to what he's actually saying. So I think that that on every page of this score, there is some kind of psychological, you can call it, I would rather refer to it rather than dreams, because there is a character who is really asleep, and that's Brunhilde, and she needs to be awakened. But everybody is living in their mind. Everybody is somehow not only the plotting and the planning, but the sickness that Barrie was talking about. The evil, the greed, and the total lack of any kind of empathy for the other, the opposite, in fact. Let's not forget that Alberic and Mima are brothers, but I mean, the way they talk to each other. I mean, there's a famous duet that the Germans referred to, this is in Act 2, as the Cavaliers duet. But it's really, I'm not far off. I mean, that this is that it's something. We were rehearsing it today. It's something that I don't like to rehearse too often because it's so scary. It's difficult musically, and they sound like they're completely out of their minds. And they are the bile, the horror. This is what this piece, the edge of sanity, is definitely hinted at. I mean, the whole Freudian world. What then Mahler, more than Strauss, I would say, but Strauss to a certain degree in Salome and Electra, of course, is his first more expressionist works. But then Mahler, in particular, in his symphonies, this digging into the depths of the human experience, human thought, human suffering, and then the need to conquer. That's very, very important. The Wagnerian concept of the hero is that there is something some kind of obstacle to conquer. Now that was taken and interpreted in so many ways. We don't have to...
Well, we can talk more about heroism shortly, but I'm delighted to say we're joined by a third hero, in a way. Thank you for an introduction to the themes behind Siegfried. We're going to be speaking with a very special guest now, Stephen Fry, a great admirer of the music and myth of Wagner, who is joining us on the line from Los Angeles. Stephen, welcome, and thank you so much for taking part in tonight's Insight.
Thank you. It's lovely to join you, and I'm just a pity I can't be with you at the Linbury. But this is a good second best. I've loved listening to Barrie and Tony. Absolutely wonderful. It's an example of what the riches that are in Wagner is, that it can cause such wonderful insights from a director and a conductor. Really great to listen.
Stephen, I wanted to ask you, as a self-professed ring chaser, you have seen stagings all around the world. What drew you into the world of the ring?
Well, I think Barrie alluded to it in terms of size. It's the ring itself, as opposed to individual masterpieces like Meistersinger and Tristan and Parsifal and Lohengrin and so on. The ring, it has a special quality of ceremony and ritual, and it takes a week, 6 days usually, and the experience is one of a sort of transcendent melding into the rest of the audience in a community sense. It does suggest Wagner's love of Greek tragedy, which was a ceremonial as much as a theatrical experience. And I think the ring, I know it sounds very overheated to talk like this about it, but I do think that is the experience you have, a ritualistic one, as much as the huge range of psychology and, as Barry mentioned, you know, father-daughter relationships and jealousy and envy and rage and spite and almost every single human emotion you can mention. And of course, he always cheats by producing such sublime music at the moment, cause you to shudder and tears to roll down your cheeks, muttering revenge on him, manipulating like this. But it works every time, for me at least. But I quite understand people for whom it is a more forbidding experience because, you know, I also love Test cricket, which takes 5 days. There must be something in me that responds to this kind of epic length.
Maybe we need a 2020 version of the Ring Cycle, I don't know. Now, you've seen the 2 previous chapters of this particular cycle, Stephen. Tell me what makes you so excited about Siegfried.
Well, firstly, of course, the maestro produces such extraordinarily wonderful sounds from his orchestra, and the rhythm. Well, no, I think the pulse is probably the word, isn't it? The amazing sort of pulse of the music, and it's so expressive and so rich and so full, but it doesn't dominate. It doesn't. It takes its place within the drama, and Barrie's staging. I mean, I'm, you know, so used to the fact that at a lot of Wagner you get what I call pepper pots. Wotan or Erder or the Norns or whoever it might be stand there like pepper pots and give their backstory and the description of how the world has gone to ruin and all the rest of it, while we look at the subtitles and our eyes sort of vaguely roam around the stage. You almost forgive a director for that, but Barrie has an amazing knack of making the theatre always alive, and that the characters, what they're singing is expressed in the staging and in what you're looking at. The wonderful domesticity of the first act of Die Walküre, and the plates and the tables and that whole sense of what being a host in this sort of almost primitive human world meant. It's how it really, his staging more than any I've seen, suits the action to the word and the word to the action, as Hamlet enjoined the players. So in this coming one, Siegfried, I'm so excited about the fact that there is this march from kind of mythic world of, you know, a kind of goblin forging. You can see a Victorian engraving of it, can't you, in your head, and the bear and the wood bird and all these very mythic and fairy tale elements, as has already been discussed. But and then this human cauldron of spite and bile, and then this pause, which Barrie mentioned, and I'd love to hear more from particularly Tony about the music, how it changes. He finished the second act of Siegfried, and then 12 years later, he came back to it, having written the Meistersingers of Nuremberg and Tristan and Isolde. So it's so different. I think if I'll keep talking for a while and I'll let others in, but philosophically, again, this can always sound pretentious when you're talking, especially when it's me. Feuerbach and his idea of gods as reflections of human impulse, and the symbolism and the primacy of humanity is at the heart of early Wagner. He was hugely influenced by it. But around the time he was writing Siegfried, and then abandoned it, 1857, I think it was, he became subject to the joys of Schopenhauer and renunciation and abnegation and a very different sort of outlook. And you can see that the love that you've experienced with Siegmund and Sieglinde is an erotic, committed, sacrificing love, which is the first kind of Wagner. But the love that you experience and you undergo yourself with Brunhilde and Siegfried at the end of Act 3, he loses himself completely in her. It is a sublimation, and it's an annihilation almost of the self. And that's that's the different feeling you get at the end of Siegfried that makes the adventure worthwhile for all its spiky oddities.
Stephen, I've got one more question I've got to ask you. We were starting to talk about Siegfried as a hero, and I wonder what you would say makes him a hero, because he has been variously described as an overgrown toddler.
Well, yes, and he is a failure, as Barrie pointed out. He's kind of too late. He comes from a different age. He comes from an age of where an innocent woodland sort of figure like him, who knows no fear, but also, as Tony said, no empathy either, kind of cold curiosity at best. And he's naive and he's trusting, and we will see in Götterdämmerung, he trusts ritual and honor, and he has no idea that he's going to be betrayed. He has no human subtlety at all. He's just at best a sort of wise child, but not really wise, an innocent fool. I don't know how you'd describe him, which doesn't make him sound very attractive. But then what Wagner does is he uses music, of course, and there's a horn call that he has, which is rousing, and then there is the sort of Siegfried theme, which I think, Tony will put me right, is kind of developed from the Notung, the sword theme, the same sort of intervals, but it's the glorious one that accompanies famously his death, peeping into volume 4.
Stephen, do you have a question then for Barrie and for Tony, one for each?
Yes, I'll ask you, Barrie, about this staging issues, how much you are aware of the delicacy of overwhelming what is being sung and what Wagner wants us to know at any one point by making it more interesting. So is it always a question of, I said, I think I've seen, which is the action to the word and the word to the action?
Yeah, I think it depends. I think the Wagner cosmos is so enormous that a director has the same choices as a singer and a conductor, in that there are, like when you do Shakespeare, there are so many different ways you can actually sing a line or think about a reaction to that. One of the crucial things that I have been pushing for the first two operas, and even more in Siegfried, and we were doing this the other day in rehearsal, is when a question is asked by a character in the ring, it's never a rhetorical question. It's, I must know the answer to this. Tell me why. Why is this? And if you concentrate, you could write a thesis about the idea of the question in the ring. And I'm not talking about just the riddle of the riddle scene with the Wanderer and Mima. I'm talking about any character in the ring, and specifically more in Siegfried than the other two, are asking, because there is not just a desperation or a need, there is a life and death depending on the answer you give me. And no one gets the answer they either want or think they're going to get, or it's Talmudic in a way. The question becomes another question, and the answer becomes a question, and the question goes on, and no one gets fulfillment, no one gets reconciliation, no one gets an answer. And that to me is very exciting, and that's my key to directing a lot of the scenes, in terms of the fact that I do believe that Wagner was aware of how many questions he was having his characters ask in the scenes. And therefore, when you get these very long scenes, and a lot of directors run away from Wagner, as you know, Stephen, or run away from the ring, because there's this false idea that the ring is a spectacle. There are spectacular moments in the ring. You need to deliver some showbiz a few times in each production, but the core stuff is actually intimate, complex dialogues between either two characters or at the very most three characters. And most of those dialogues are led by questions. So this to me is a very, very big theme. And in most Wagner productions that I've experienced, that's not taken as being a very important part of the theatrical world. So it may surprise people when they think of what's important for me. I would say it's the questions that the characters ask another character.
Fascinating. And you have a question as well, Stephen, for Tony, I think.
Yes, I wonder, Tony, what we should listen out for between Act 2 and Act 3 that will help us kind of feel what Wagner was, how he had changed his music and what he was now up to, as it were, with the leitmotifs and the rest of his weaponry, if you like.
Yeah, he stopped his work on Siegfried about 20 pages from the end of Act 2. So you could say that up till that point, there's an inner logic of the music. But when he comes back after having written Die Meistersinger and Tristan 12 years later, there's a darker tinge to the music. There's, it's as if he's gotten closer to the core of the earth somehow. That's the image that I think. Because especially after he's killed the dragon, we hear the motives. There's this one place in particular that always gets to me, and it goes da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum. It goes da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da. Usually you've heard that theme in Act 1. Da-dum, da-da-dum, da-dum, da-dum, or da-dum, da-da-dum, 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 da-da-da. And this time it's da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum. There's an incredible effort or weight to the music that is introduced. There is a Tristanesque counterpoint, the music, what the undercurrent, what's going on underneath, that is so much now more horizontal than vertical. What do I mean by that? By this hammering thing, that this obsessive thing is a template for much of Act 1 and Act 2. You have the slow, drawn-out music of the dragon. You have the wise music of the Wanderer. But this hectic, twitchy music dominates. What you haven't had yet is this kind of these waves of emotion that we have had to a certain extent in Valkyrie, but they're on a completely more exalted and more passionate level. It's unmistakable when you get to that certain page where he started off again. It's just different. And the beginning of Act 3 in particular is gigantic. It's titanic. All of a sudden, I mean, the orchestra of Siegfried is enormous, but he's often painting with chamber orchestra-like combinations, except here and there we have the massive brass. But it's as if from Act 3 on, he's taking no prisoners. And the gigantism, that which attracted you to the ring, this real ritualistic component, preparing for Götterdämmerung, which is even more expansive, is prepared by this Act 3. But the complexity of Act 3, the humanity of Act 3, okay, we're introduced to a burgeoning love story, but it's not only that. It's what you talked about. It's the type of eroticism, the sense of discovery, sense of humanity, becoming a human being for Brunhilde. All this elicits a response from Wagner that has been enriched by the searching qualities that imbue the whole of Tristan and Isolde, this this search for, I mean, okay, for tonality and all that technical stuff, the musical technical stuff, but it's also because of these, the story of this crazy psychological story of these two people coming together and can only be as one in death. So this Schopenhauerian complexity has completely transformed how Wagner thinks about theater in general, and that's what the music feels like. For me, Act 3 of Siegfried has the greatest amount of creativity in it. New tunes, a transformation of the leitmotifs into something totally unexpected. The beauty, and yet even the youthfulness is brought onto another plane. It's something, you can tell that Siegfried is my favorite among these operas, but it's true, especially because of the light and shade of the whole entire opera. But the luminosity and the creativity of Act 3 is something, it's difficult to talk about actually right now, even though I'm going on and on and on, is because we haven't rehearsed the note of Act 3 yet.
No.
And so it's just like, I can't wait to get to it, because it's something very, very special. But in a nutshell, it's a completely different orchestrator, a completely different human being you're dealing with. After 12 years of that world of I mean, let's not forget that Die Meistersinger, it's about a lot of things, but it's mainly about music. It's about how music is made, you know, and the idea of the innovator and the traditionalists, and working into how music is made, that just all the technical aspects, short, long, phrases, bits, gestures, counterpoint, fugue, romance, all that now is part of his armory, which then imbues the rest of Siegfried.
You know, I think it's no secret to say I think Siegfried is your favourite as well, Stephen. And as a bit of an expert on myth, I just wanted to ask for your thoughts on what Wagner does with his source material, you know, the Nordic, the Icelandic, the German mythology, that makes it so distinctive when it's all put together like this in Siegfried.
Absolutely right. I mean, he understood from quite early on that the advantage of myth is that because it comes from no time, it is never out of time. It is never dated. Imagine if he had written a sort of Verismo opera, an opera set in, I don't know, Dresden or Leipzig or something in the 1870s. We would now look at that as a historical thing. It would be very hard to find the eternal truths of power, authority, love, desire, revenge, and all the big things. Whereas when it's mythical characters, they can serve simultaneously, this is the genius of what Wagner does, I think, simultaneously as kind of archetypes, symbolic of something, and utterly real individual characters. And that's, it means that every time you see the ring, you are able to forget, as it were, all the extraneous detail of being human, and you see what it is to be human, shorn of dress code, ethnicity, and all those sort of things that we reduce ourselves down to. And so you get a better sense of what we as humans feel when you see gods, mythic beasts, and others who can just be, you know, pure in their emotion. I hope that's any kind of an explanation.
Oh, it's wonderful, and your passion really comes across. I think everyone involved in Siegfried is very passionate. Thank you so much, Stephen. It's been really brilliant to speak to you, and I think it's fair to say we all wish you the very best with promoting your film for the Oscars. We hope you win. And thank you so much for joining us tonight, all the way from Los Angeles.
Thank you again. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
So Tony and Barrie, for our last section, let's talk in a bit more detail about the staging and the music for this production. And I'm delighted to say we have Edward Reeve on standby on the piano to help with illustrating it. You've done such a good job already, just verbally, Tony, I think. But give us a sense of some of the differences between Siegfried and the previous two operas musically, and perhaps you could guide Edward into what you want him to illustrate.
One of the things that I left out in my discourse before was the fact that a lot of the music, I would say most of the music, is in 3/4, 3 beats to a bar, rather than the traditional Teutonic 4. I'm not saying that there isn't 3/4 in Valkyrie, you know, because of course the Ride of the Valkyries is in 3, but it's obsessively so in Siegfried. And interestingly enough, when Siegfried comes in, he's, you know, the young boy looked after by Mime. Mime is his father and mother, the single parent to this boy. And Mime has been singing for quite a long stretch at the beginning with this this hammering and the bassoons that there's the rumble. And we hear that, and then we hear the hammering that's all in his head. The twitch. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. It's meant to get under your skin. It gets under your skin. It's very annoying after a while, because this is because of this frustration that I talked about. Now, going ahead, there's dee da 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 da. Now we hear the ring theme. The ring theme turns on itself. You'll hear. Down, up. So it creates. But you imagine this not as music, but as psychology. Now the sword, the thing that's now all of that is there's failure all over that. That's what makes it interesting. Is the character of Mime can't. He hears ta-dum, 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 and all of this is, you know, in the guy's head. And I find this incredible as theater, because not a word has been uttered. Finally, the music just becomes so kind of over, this crescendo becomes so overwhelming that finally he has to sing, and he explodes. He goes... voller Plage, Mühe ohne Zweck. Das beste Schwert, das je geschweißt, Riesenfäuste. It's like he births, and he vomits this frustration. I mean, it's from a dramaturgical point of view, as a theater composer, it has a richness that is a gift to a stage director and to a musician. Now, the first act, now when Siegfried comes in, you'll hear a version of a hammering theme and a version of a horn call. Stephen mentioned the horn call. Listen to this. Here, rumble. Oi-ho! runs in. And he goes to the high C, which is very emblematic when you're talking in vocal terms. A tenor goes to a high C. It never happens in Wagner. But here's this guy, without fear he is. He's without fear, so he goes to the high C. I think this is all very important stuff. Now, I'm not, he's a nature boy. So when he talks about the Spiegel and all that stuff, where he sits in front of the brook and he looks and he sees his face. And again, this is in 2 to a bar. That's very important, what I wanted to say. Whereas Mima is 3 to a bar. And also he sings like, he says, I looked after you, I mothered you. Als zullendes Kind sog ich dich auf, lernte ich mit klein. Also very annoying. Siegfried sings like this.
When he gets there. It's a long score.
No, all right. 2 to a bar. You can imagine the scene, and he sees his face in Spiegel. These lovely harmonies, and in just a few notes, you get this his relationship to nature. But then, the sword. Not the sword. We hear the family music. We hear, he doesn't know that it's his family, but we hear the Welser. It's wonderful, but you see, in just a few bars, there's the difference, and the meter, it tells you about the difference in the 2 characters, yeah?
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Edward. Barrie, your creative team then, creating the visuals and the directing this whole thing on stage. Give us a sense of how you've conceived it. The set designs by Rufus Didvitsus, the costumes by Victoria Bear. They've been involved, both of them, from the outset. How important are they to helping you interpret your vision for this work?
Not just important, it's impossible without them. So, I mean, opera is the most collaborative art form around in existence. Certainly the most collaborative performing art, I believe, but certainly I think the most collaborative of any art form, because you are dealing with so many different people without whose work it's impossible to put it on. And certainly for a director, the designer or the designers become a fundamental purpose. Also Alessandro Caletti, my lighting designer, because light is very important to me in all my productions. And light is a theme in Wagner and in Ring, the day and night. So, I mean, it's a dream world for lighting designers too. But, you know, I've done 8, as I said, it's not my first time at the rodeo. So I know the pitfalls. And there's 3 things I've learned about directing Wagner. The first is, if you try and illustrate exactly what Wagner is doing in the music, you fail. This is I think Tristan and Isolde is the best example of that. A lot of directors think, oh, water. It's Tristan, the idea of water is important. It's important as water, also fluidity, the inner water. You know, Tristan and Isolde, in a way, become water at the end of the 3rd act. And water is a huge theme. That's the last thing you put on stage in Tristan and Isolde. Because in Tristan and Isolde, that is water. The orchestra is the ocean. The orchestra is the fluidity. If you try and put that on stage, you will never compete. Worse still, you'll make that weaker, because you will never be able to compete with the idea of water as Klang, as what Wagner does. Now, in the Ring, Wagner is very specific what he wants. You ignore it. Not because I'm being flippant and I'm a director and I ignore it, because it's not going to help you in any way. That was a 19th century man who wrote stage directions and scenography, which in an ironic way can only really be made in the 21st century if you use video and film, but then it's not theatre anymore. But he was very disappointed. He realised he'd written something which is actually unstageable. The end of Goethe-Dammerung, the description of what he wants, how he wants it. No one does it. If you try and do it, the audience laughs. I've seen productions where people have tried to do it. It's laughable. It comes across as ludicrous. That's not our job. Our job is to interpret, to find metaphors or the images that are somehow, as Tony talked about, dragged out, like by the what is it called? The thing that the dirt thing that they...
Digger.
The earth.
Oh, the thing.
I'm asking you that.
Earth mover.
Earth, you know, when you're building and you're dragging the earth out.
The crane, not the...
Not the crane.
That's the thing.
It's very successful.
It's a digger.
The digger, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, you're dragging out of the text and the music certain, you know, hopefully certain impulses and certain reverberations. And, for example, it was very clear to us in the very beginning...
Excavator, yeah.
And, thank you. And one of the things was very important for me was that I liked the idea because we are dealing with Earth, billions of years old, as this beautiful naked woman, dreaming and remembering what we were. That's was the starting point. So therefore, she is dreaming with what happened, which is the world burnt. There was a conflagration. I mean, water came over it. And I thought, oh, in the memory, everything's burnt then. And everything is like the furniture has sort of fallen off the Weltasche, which is the huge mythological tree where it all began, where Wotan committed this crime. And he carries a fragment of that crime with him in his hand, is his spear. And I thought, ooh, it's like the set is sort of bits of the Weltasche have fallen off. Sometimes there's a huge other tree. Sometimes you'll see in Siegfried as other natural elements. Sometimes there's a table and chair. They're all made out of this burnt wood. So this was this sort of thematic or aesthetic thread that we sort of wove, which comes from Wagner. But of course, he didn't write, I want the production now to have burnt wood. But that's interpretive, and we are an interpretive art form. So for me, it was very important to find other motives or other metaphors, and to for example, in the Walküre, it was very important that Earth is just not watching. Mother Earth she plays a part. So Notung, we didn't have the tree in the sword was in the wood because it has to be because they talk about it, but behind the tree, behind the wall, was Erde, and when the wall went up, we realized Notung was actually inside of her, which I think is a very sort of, it's birth and death and everything in that same image. In Siegfried and Goethe-Dammerung, you'll be surprised what Erde gets up to. And of course, you know, if you may be thinking, oh, I don't understand the Erde thing, and, you know, quite frankly, I find it shocking that people refer to an old body on stage as being ugly, because I think there's nothing more beautiful. And I get very upset when people refer to, oh, these poor people that were made to be naked in Barrie Kosky's Ring Cycle or humiliated for this or whatever. These women who have been playing Erde, and we have a few, are having the time of their lives and are profoundly important for the show. And they are treated with such adoration and love every moment of being in the rehearsal room, that it makes me very angry when I read people talking about as if we are some sort of humiliation factory. And secondly, that people don't understand that the fragility and vulnerability of Erde is what I'm going for. And if you don't, it's your problem. You know, and if you're confronted by that image, maybe you should think about why you're confronted by your mortality rather than blaming the poor actress who's playing Erde in my production. But that's another discussion. But for me, this is a very central thing. And we all know that everything's going to go horribly wrong in Goethe-Dammerung. So Siegfried is like this amazing bridge, not just a bridge between Wagner's work before Meistersinger and Tristan and Isolde, but also a bridge into this changing world of Rheingold and Walküre, and what is going to happen in Götterdämmerung, where everything goes horribly wrong in a catastrophic way. And we know that Mother Earth is going to have to bear witness to that. And that's, for me, much more powerful to have an 80-year-old actress playing a 3-billion-year-old woman that the audience can relate to than any other interpretation of Erda I've seen. I'm not banging my own drum, but I find it heartbreaking. And if you can't be heartbroken at what happens to Mother Earth, then you're not reading the news at the moment.
Fantastic answer, thank you.
I want to say
yes, Tony.
one thing that's very, very important, because Barrie mentioned, you know, how it's a real dead end if you try to double, you know, in the visual presentation, everything that the music is doing. But we work very hard, though, and this, I think, sets the opera Siegfried apart from the others. This opera has more accents than any opera I know. And most of our work during the day is to help the singers achieve the accents, often through physical gesture, but also and especially through articulation. And you know, the thing is, these roles are so difficult and so long that once a singer has learned the role and performed it, often, sometimes it comes out, it can come out like drivel. Like you know, like just something, a stream of consciousness. Oh, it's in my memory. I remember it. And you've got to constantly be reminding people that's the key word, bang. And here we need, you know.
That's hard.
It's very, very hard.
They are, after 3 hours of this, the singers, I mean, we have an amazing cast. I don't think you can see this or hear this opera better sung and acted like it's going to be acted. The cast is phenomenal. And Andreas Schager is the best Siegfried in the world. He's making his debut here. Yeah. He acts and has the energy of a 15-year-old boy. And
which you'll need.
But Peter Hoare, Christopher Maltman, Chris Maltman, Chris Purvis, these are, but even they, and most of them have worked with me before, and most of them worked with Tony before. At the end of Siegfried rehearsals, it's like, well, Peter Hoare's completely bruised. I don't know what his wife thinks of me, but he's bruised, and their minds, you know. And Tony sometimes says, "That's enough for today. We actually have to stop." Because, you know, I'm someone who likes to rehearse to the last second of the call. And Tony just says, there comes a limit where it actually just doesn't work anymore. And then the next day they come like children back to, you know, Christmas Day, let's unwrap the presents, because it's so exciting to be in the rehearsal room. But at the end of the day, but also, I mean, I finish. It rarely happens to me, but at 5:30, I just think I never want to hear a single note of opera in my entire life. Because we are repeating sometimes phrases or pages 30, 40 times. You know, so you're experiencing it once. Fabulous. But we are sometimes listening to this, and as Tony said, shut up.
But also, Tony, you have to be there from the beginning to the very end of the performance, conducting. I mean, the physical demands on you don't stop at the end of rehearsals. It's the opposite. Heroic.
Yeah, but I think it must be. I mean, I'm very envious to know I'm in my dressing room and I'm going to be conducting Siegfried tonight. Must be thrilling. I mean, you know, there must be.
No, I swallow deeply before I go in to conduct the third act, because that's something else, and it's very technically difficult. It's much more technically difficult than the rest of the opera for the musicians, in particular for the strings, because the level of the string writing that he developed, I mean, already an incredible jump up from Rheingold to Walküre. But Walküre always remained somewhat awkward for the strings. Here, his level of knowledge, technical knowledge, has, you know, so what he asks, especially the fiddles, the violins, what to do. I mean, there are some incredible, what we call licks, difficult passages that are mind-blowing. And so through rehearsal, you work on these things a lot. And of course, on the night, you're slightly anxious, will it come off? And then there's the famous slow passage before he wakes her up, of where the violins play alone and they go up into the... And it seems like it could go on forever, but it's so exposed. But the risk, the greater courage and risk-taking that has developed in Wagner over these, having written Siegfried and Meistersinger, is incredible. Tristan, sorry, it's really incredible. But for us, it's.
Well, you said that you are about to start rehearsing this third act, so can you give us an insight?
We've just killed Fafner.
Okay.
Tomorrow we're going to kill Mima.
Okay.
10:30 in the morning. Good thing to do on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
On Monday, we're going to repeat everything. Tuesday morning, Tony's doing music on Act 3. And then on Tuesday afternoon, here we go. So we're spending all next week on it.
And I start with the orchestra next week. So now it starts to... and there'll be quite a lot of people in the orchestra, especially in the strings, who are new to the piece. So it's going to be a fantastic voyage of discovery and total fear, total... they will not know what hit them, those...
What are you looking forward to most over these last few days and weeks of rehearsals, Barrie?
Well, we're only at the end of the second week of 6 or nearly 7 weeks rehearsal, so we're still, it's emerging. But for me, the end result is not so interesting. The end result is my present to the audience, and then the conductor controls everything with the singers, and my work is done. And I like to let the productions fly away. And by fly away, I mean, I'm not a director who comes in every single night and goes, you didn't do that. Because I think if you've got really good people and you've done the good work, the production should soar by itself. I should be able to say, fly, little bird. and off the Waldvögel goes. But my joy is the rehearsal room. And my joy is the rehearsal room to see things that look impossible become possible, to see things that look challenging become easy, to see things that are problematic remain problematic until maybe a very last moment, and to see new ideas and new things merge. And the most beautiful in any production for me is to see the moment of ignition in the performer when all these technical ideas and intellectual ideas, which are important in terms of the music, the ideas, the text, the staging, ignite in their bodies and then go ka-chung with the spark plug of their soul and does this, and they come alive when you move into the stage. It's the most thrilling moment for a director to see. It's magical. It's alchemical. I can never explain how it happens. And it's my version of childbirth, I think.
Well, I have to say, it is utterly thrilling listening to the two of you bring alive the world of Siegfried and your preparation for it. Such a pleasure to speak to you both. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you as well to Edward Reeve on the piano and, of course, to Stephen Fry earlier. That is it for tonight's Insight. But you can now book tickets to see Barrie Kosky's new production of Siegfried, conducted by Antonio Pappano, on the main stage here at the Royal Opera House from the 17th of March. And you can also watch it live in cinemas on the 31st of March. For now, though, thank you to our audience here in the Linbury Theatre, as well as to everyone joining us from around the world. It has been a real pleasure to be here with you for this Insight, supported by Rolex. Good night.